Today we're talking wine jargon and what they're talking about, what I'm talking about when I'm describing wines and these words that, what do they mean, you know? And I'm not going to break down why critics use these words or anything. I'm just going to tell you what they mean in layman's terms because that's what we need to do. So for us to better understand it, wine, we need to know what this is. The Vknowgeek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
Okay, yeah, so I have done a jargon episode before, but I thought I was just making things up from what I sort of talk about, and then I thought, hold on, what I should do is not just be me-centric in this, I'm not the only person talking about wine, reviewing wine, and everything else. Let's look at the top 10 words, the jargon words that are used most often, and let's break those down because, then you can translate it to anything. And let's be real. I know you're not always watching me. I'm not the only person you get wine advice from. You go everywhere. So let's do this. The first word is minerality, and I try not to use it, but I end up using it, because there's not really a better way to describe it. When the smell of on a hot day when it rains, you smell the concrete. That stony smell. Could smell a bit like chalk or talcum powder or slightly metallic. That's that mineral note. Even sometimes the mineral note gets, actually I tie it in with sulfides and sulfites. So sulfide is what is a byproduct of fermentation. So you get this smell that smells like the struck match. I quite often smell brie or camembert cheese, or you can smell sort of that metallic sort of mineral note. It's very similar to minerality, that smell. So that's another smell. I mean, with that whole fermentation thing. And sulfite, and then sulfites are what you add to the wine. Yeah, and so that's the difference between those two. But we're talking about minerality, and minerality is just that, that stony sort of mineral. Like if you think of the game, am I a plant? Am I an animal? Am I a mineral? That. Think about what you would think is mineral eggshells, or as I said, concrete, or river stones. Smelling stones. A really good idea. Gravel. The metal dust in the summer. That's sort of idea of minerality. We will all have our own little triggers to what links us to minerality. This is the other thing. It is subjective. My interpretation could be slightly different to guy down the road or person down the road, but it's the same general thing. We're detecting something in the wine, and it lends itself towards that mineral note, and so that's what minerality is. Structure is how the components of the wine come together. So the acidity, the tannin, the mouthfeel, how round it is, how full it is, how much tannin is in there, how much acidity, and how the acidity is part of it. An analogy I use when I'm talking about champagne or method is that the Chardonnay is the backbone. It's the the structure of the house. It's the framework that you're building everything around. The Pinot Noir are the walls. And then the Pinot Meunier are the soft finishings, the softer touches that you add, the curtains and what have you, to make it feel like a home, make it feel comfortable. And so that's the structural elements. You're detecting the structure of the Chardonnay because it's creating this line through the palate, and then everything else is falling into line around that. It could be that the structure's all happening through the sides as opposed to the middle. That's what you're looking at, the structural definition, just how it feels in your mouth, how it interacts with your palate is what you're describing, or what the reviewer is describing with structure. And it really goes hand in hand with tannin and acidity for the most part. There is the fruit weight component too, but really it's the acidity and the tannin and how they interact with your palate. Linear. Next one is linear. And linear, I mean, if you think of a straight line. Think of, a straight line, everything's in its place, everything's tucked in, it's streamlined. And that's what's happening. It's linear, so you're not getting anything sort of at odds. It's just straight through the palate. Everything is nice in its place and neat. Not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the structure. Again, it's part of the structure and how it interacts with your palate. A lot of these words are how they interact with your palate. And so if something's linear on the palate, it's literally just in and out. It doesn't really attack the sides of your mouth with huge acidity. It doesn't have big tannins. It doesn't sort of dry your mouth out. It's just there, Texture. Texture is the next one. And texture, is, again, how it feels, how it interacts with your palate. Is it textural? Does it leave? Or does it, so I would almost put, a richly textured wine is opposite to a linear wine. If it's richly textured, it's rich and round and interacts with your palate. It's tactile. It really gets in there and involved. If it's not very well textured, it's very much more in the linear style. So that's texture and just how it rolls across your palate. Probably a better way to describe it than flows. It's not linear. It doesn't just go straight through. It just rolls through. So if it's richly textured, you're feeling that, and there's different layers of texture coming through right through the palate. So that's texture. That's the texture. Grip is part of the texture. It's how it attacks the palate. So the tannins, how the tannins are attacking it. If it's a grippy wine, there's a bit of tannin. There's a bit of that rawness. It's attacking your mouth. It's stripping it. It's gripping onto it. It's like sandpaper. It's trying to strip the inside of your mouth. That's a grippy wine. If someone's calling it grippy, then that's what they're talking about. They're talking about how the robust tannins are interacting with the palate. The rich, the full tannin is really attacking the sides of your mouth. That's suggesting a grippy wine. And basically the opposite to that is integrated. Now, integrated is just a word suggests itself. Everything's in its place. Everything's tucked in. You detect everything. You notice everything. You notice the fruit, the acidity, the yolk. I talk about this quite often. This is probably one of the words that I really like to use quite often. With really good wines, everything's in its place. Everything falls into line and comes in when it's supposed to and not when it's not. And it's just the right amount and it's just eases through, but you notice everything. And, this is part of the reason why you cellar wines is because the grippiness, especially with reds, the grippiness will settle down and it becomes more integrated and more into itself and flows through the palate. Midweight. Now, there's three parts of the palate that it really gets talked about. The front palate, and that's the sweet. You notice the fruit there. There's the back palate, which is the finish. How does it finish on your palate? And that's where you detect most times the tannin, the oak, the spice. In the mid palate, what's happening in the middle of your palate, right in the middle of the mouth, and that could be like picks up in the middle of the palate. The wine gets bigger, or the wine falls, or it just interacts with that palate, that part of the palate in some way, part of your mouth in some way. If it's not just the fruit at the front and it's not just stuff at the back, there's something going on in the middle. And so to describe that, it's the mid palate. What's the mid palate like? So for instance, with the wine I had last week, I did a live tasting of it. The mid palate was a little bit light. There wasn't a lot going on the mid palate, so that's how I describe the mid palate. I didn't talk about it because there wasn't much going on, and I don't really talk about the mid palate too much anyway. The finish, well, this is how it ends. This is how long the finish is, so how long you're tasting it, what is happening at that time. It's the finish. There's a lot that goes on the finish, Once it's past your tongue, what's happening? And that's what they're describing with the finish. What's happening with the wine? Because the wine doesn't just go straight away. There's something else going on. And so they want to describe that, talk about that, and really invest in that, because it is an important thing, because it's a lasting memory. And so finish is a big thing. Typicity. Now, that's the next one. Typicity is, how would I describe typicity? It's just as is, what you expect it to taste like. It's a bit like saying, analogy, it's what it is, what it says on the box. It says it's going to be a Pinot Noir, it is a Pinot Noir. If it says it's going to be a Chardonnay, it is a Chardonnay. For that reviewer, it ticks all the boxes and suggests that it's exactly of its type. I mean, reviewers might go further and say it is exactly of its type for a Gisborne Chardonnay, or a Californian Zinfandel, or a Burgundian, what have you, Pinot Noir. And so that's what they're saying when they say typicity. They're just saying that it is what it says it is. There's no hiding from the fact that it is what it is. And that's obviously that's important. I mean, it could be too. They could go a step further, that it's typicity means it's exactly what was expected from that vineyard, that grape variety, in that year. Likes of after I tried the Tony Bush made a Chardonnay from Two Terraces in 2023, Cyclone Gabrielle. I tasted it. It tasted of Tony Bush. It tasted of the vineyard. It tasted of the vintage. And so for me, that's the perfect example of typicity, because it ticked all those boxes that if I was to map out what a wine would taste like that was grown in the Two Terraces vineyard, made by Tony Bush, and it was from 2023, that's what it would taste like. So I put it on the list at Lionel's, because I was just like, wow, you can't get much better than that. It's exactly what it says on the box. Okay, precision. Now, precision, again, it's all about, how it interacts with your palate, how precise it is, because there's, I think this one really falls into the category of, well, it can sort of be broadened out, but I use it quite often when I'm talking about Chardonnay, even Pinot Noir to a point, but it's that precision. It feels so precise. It's so on point. It hits your palate just the way it should, interacts with it just the way it should. Sure, there might be little side things going on here and there, but it's precise. It's to the point. Boom. Linked in with typicity, really, because if it's very typical, it's going to be precise and on the mark, depending on the variety, obviously. If it's a Californian Zinfandel, I wouldn't call that precise, because give that a precision tag, because it's rich and ripe and jammy. It's in your face. It's full-bodied. It's not precise. Precise to me, still, it's almost hand in hand with acidity, and that structural element of the wine, almost lineal, but sort of, lineal next level. So a linear wine, and then you'll have a very precise wine, because at the end of the day, for me, precision, it ticks every box, but it's still on the money. It's still delivering where it should be. Yeah. And so that's that one. And that's the top 10. Those are the top 10 words that are used. I mean, I actually use ChatGPT just to sort of speed things up to get that list. And they talked about a few other words that, I might like to talk about that should be banned. But I looked at the list and I was just like, I actually like those words, like brooding. Brooding for me is a really good example of, personifying wine. It's, wine can be brooding because it can be dark and intense and just enveloping, and when I'm talking about enveloping, it's just, every part of your mouth, your being feels the wine when you're drinking it. And so that's brooding to me. You smell it and it envelops you as well. That makes it dark and brooding, and it's just that sense of feeling. And quite often with words that are used by, especially words like brooding, it's just to invoke that sense of feeling, that really give you that deep sense of what the wine is like. It's not necessarily just to sound good, to be flowery or floral or poetic. It's really just to nail it down to the essence, so you know exactly what that wine tastes like. You can feel it by reading it. It's like reading a good book. From a really good author, a really descriptive author, they're able to really, get you involved, really suck you into the story. And that's what these words are meant to do in these reviews, is to suck you in, to take you to sitting in the chair with me while I'm tasting the wine. If I feel like it's brooding, it's because it's the feeling I'm feeling. If I feel a sense of joy, or just like one description that I use in this regard to try and give you, take you into the wine glass yourself as well, is it's like a symphony. Those amazingly perfect wines, for me, it's like a symphony. Everything is happening, the volume of music, the intricacy of all the different instruments all playing in harmony. That's what drinking a really good wine is like for me. It's like a symphony. It's like there's a symphony in my mouth, because all of these parts, all of these, these musicians that have spent decades, hours and hours of training to perfect their skill, their art, it's all happening in my mouth. All the different parts of the wine is like a different musician, all playing their part perfectly. And that's how I describe it. That's how it feels to me. And so I try to take you on that journey with me by saying it's like a symphony, because that's how it feels. So these jargon words, they are used, and then these other floral, poetic words those are used to describe the wine. This is to make you feel the wine. Those other words like brooding and things. It's made so you can come into the wine yourself with us and go on the journey with us. So that's the jargon episode, if you like, and that's why these poetic words are used as well as these core top 10 words are used for that reason, so that they're describing the wine. You just need to know what they're describing. And if they're talking about brooding or talking about a symphony, you can understand that it's just trying to paint the picture for you. paint that picture so you can be there drinking the wine with. So yeah, we've got another live tasting after the break. We'll see if the wine is poetic enough to warrant.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
Okay, so this one we're going back to Hope's Grove. So 2 weeks in a row, same producer, but why not? Little secret, I'm actually recording this the same day. So yeah, Hope's Grove Pinot Noir 2024. So as I was saying last week, they made a white Pinot Noir because the vintage wasn't good enough to make a red. 24, good enough. So let's check it out. Okay, so yeah, the colour, very much that brick, sort of light garnet colour, which I kind of expected. It is Hawke's Bay Pinot Noir, and this tends to be colouring of Hawke's Bay Pinot, very light, not very deep, not sort of those ruby, sort of almost purple colouring that you might get down south. It's very much light garnet, colour, almost tawny. The nose, very much cherry, red cherry and strawberry, almost not cooked, but, on the way, right. A little bit of spice in there, some light florals. Hope you're not noticing me pushing the buttons because there was a low power battery mode came up. Anyway, smell that. It's very floral, but very much in that almost cooked fruit. Still with fresh florals, but there's a little bit of cooked note there. Palate is light, elegant, exactly what I would expect. Lovely fruit. It's a little bit of grippiness on the side, just a touch of tannin. I mean, this is a warm vintage, so I'd expect that. Structurally, it's light. There is a little bit of phenolic texture right on the back end. It is a little bit cold, so not really picking up a lot. There's some freshness, so that it's like fresh plum that sucking on the core stone of a plum. Again, lovely wine, well made. Much in the lighter spectrum. The spice is starting to come through now on the palate. Nice, just giving a little bit more definition to the finish. The length is good. And this is very typical of a Pinot, in my experience, from Hawke's Bay. So, as far as that goes, typicity is a tick. I'd happily drink this. It's my style of wine. I like Pinots like this, elegant. Pinots to me are supposed to be feminine, not masculine. So this is perfect as far as that goes. As far as the score goes, I'll give it 92 out of 100 because it just, it has everything there. It just can't go a little bit further, you know what I mean? This would be amazing with charcuterie. So that's my pick, is charcuterie with this. Whatever the case, it's just something a little bit of salty, a little bit of sweet, and not too heavy because dried meats, cured meats aren't too heavy. So yeah, that's my pick. So again, that's all we have this week. Thank you as always for joining us. Sante Ngau Borak Yoho.